Good morning, Brian Hall. How are you?
I'm doing great, Michael. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for being with me today.
I'm glad to be here. I truly appreciate the invitation. I'm looking forward to it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Brian Hall is about to enter into rarefied air. He is about to become one of only 17 people in the world. I'm going to tell you about that credential here in just a second. If you're joining us today on the YouTube channel, please know that you can you can listen to all of the audio versions of these Talk to Me podcast episodes on Podbean, iTunes, all of the popular platforms. And if you're listening today, you can watch the interview on my Angelo Caruso YouTube channel. That's true across the board. Brian, I've known you now for, my God, I'm thinking 12 or 15 years, maybe longer.
Something like that. Yeah, it's been a good ride.
And what's really fun is I've got to experience you and be in your company all over the world as we attend Rotary conventions and conferences, and that's been a special treat as well. That's really how we met, through Rotary.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think the ability to see the world and make friends that you never would have encountered is one of the magical things about Rotary. I tell people quite frequently that my kids could travel anywhere in the world and would not be outside of help, except as it turns out, basic training. My son, who
Yeah,
just went to basic training.
yeah. It's really a unique opportunity to serve. Of course, that's a raison d'etre for Rotary. The reason it exists, for the uninitiated who might be enjoying our interview today. Um, the raison d'etre for Rotary is giving and volunteering, and there's lots of ways you can give and volunteer, but I can't think of very many organizations that offer that world scope. In Rotary parlance, it's actually an avenue of service, international service. And that's why I end up seeing you in places like foreign countries, like Portugal and Hawaii coming up, and
Yeah.
Tennessee.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's actually that international component that first attracted me to Rotary.
Is it?
Um, I had uh, I had actually had a life event happen that caused me to realize that I had not really done a whole lot to leave my mark on the world. And I had traveled to Russia to do some work in orphanages there. And I came back and started a not for profit. And it turns out the attorney that helped me was the president of the Covington Rotary Club. And
Ah.
the CPA that helped me was the treasurer of the Covington Rotary Club. And they introduced me to Rotary. And I started looking at it. And I was like, man, this is exactly what I need to be involved in.
So was the trip to Russia prior to Rotary? It was not a Rotary connection?
No, it was not. It was not. It was, let's see, I joined Rotary in February of 2007. And so that Russia trip would have been in the fall of 2006.
Yeah, I
Yep.
want to get to your big announcement, the big reveal, everybody, why I'm having Brian on today in just a second. But let's finish about Russia first. How did you find it? Where did you go?
Actually spent most of my time in St. Petersburg. That was the first of four trips that I made over to Russia. Most of the time in St. Petersburg and the surrounding areas, some in Moscow. Actually learned a little bit of Russian. As it turns out, Southern accents don't harm speaking Russian. And no, I was at church, and my wife knew that I wanted to do things like that for a while. And there was an announcement in a little flyer at the church about this upcoming trip, and she said, you need to go. And of course I was like, no, KGB and all of this stuff. And she said, no, really, you need to go. And it turns out that event changed my life.
Usually, when wives say you need to go, it's a completely
Yeah,
different meaning.
well, it could have been the KGB that caused her to want me to go. You never know. I mean, it's worked out well, but
It's so interesting how
yeah.
conversation happens. Here we are on the day that Alexei Navalny was supposed to go to trial after being in prison for so long. Um,
Yeah.
and for those of you not keeping score at home, he went missing a couple days ago. The way the media announced it was very interesting, because they didn't say he escaped. They said he's missing from a Russian prison. And his
Yeah,
attorneys, I think his team now fears that maybe he's met his demise, or I mean, we won't know
sure
until
hope not. One of the things that I've learned in traveling the world is that really, at the end of the day, we're all alike. Russian people want the best for their children. They want a better life for those that come behind them, just like we do, just like the
yeah.
people in India, just like the people in Australia. And a lot of times it's these other institutions that cause us so much grief.
In the words of the famous philosopher Sting, the Russians love their children too.
That's exactly right. Yeah, what a great tune. I love that album.
Yeah. So the big announcement, man, is you're about to become a Rotary Director. There are
Mm.
only 17 in the world, and each director, a little inside baseball for people that don't know Rotary. It's one of the largest, and for my money, the best international or the best service organization in the world. It happens to be international. Um, and Brian, so most people know about the Rotary at the club level, and then the clubs constitute usually a 50, 55, 60 member club district. He and I have both been fortunate to be district governors of our respective territories. And then the step after that, if you're climbing the Rotary org chart, is that you would be in charge of a zone, and in Rotary's case, the way it's set up right now, a paired zone, and you'll be repping which zones, Brian?
I am from zone 31 and we're paired with zone 30. So zone 30 and 31.
And you have an international flavor in the paired zone?
No, actually, we're called the Heart of America zones,
Oh, that's right.
and we are that's right. We are the only two zones in North America that are not international.
Yeah, you're right down the center of the country almost.
That's right. That's
And
yep.
you referenced your southern accent. I know people are wondering where you're from. Where you zooming in from today?
I grew up in Mississippi, in Jackson, Mississippi, dead middle of the state, and about 25 years ago, my wife and I moved down to the New Orleans area from Jackson. So I'm in the New Orleans area, actually on the North Shore Lake Ponchatrain.
Okay, very good. It's lovely. My
I
brother
get told
lived.
sometimes that I sound like I'm from Louisiana, and I tell them, no, I don't. I don't sound at all like I'm from Louisiana.
My brother lived on the North Shore for quite a while. It's a lovely area. The
Yeah.
Lake Pontchartrain Bridge is the why they call it the shore, I think. 26-mile bridge.
Yeah, 24, I think. Yes, that's correct. It's a long bridge.
It is. I
Yes.
mean, you think you're leaving. It's the longest bridge I think I've ever been on.
Yeah, I think China actually just built one that was longer, but it
China.
is one of the longest. Yeah, it is one of the longest bridges continuously over water in the world.
Oh, I didn't know that. I just knew it was a long ass thing. The
No,
reason you think about
it's
that is
one
when
of the
you
long.
when you enter the bridge, there's just like there's no rest stop, there's no restaurant, there's no
Oh no,
rest.
no, no. Make sure
It
you have
is.
gasoline. Make sure
Oh
that you're
yeah,
prepared for about
it's
30
a
minutes on the bridge.
it's a thing, man.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
congratulations. I know that sometimes people are angling for this kind of thing. Sometimes you have to put in multiple times to get it. I know very few people that want the position of Rotary Director get to serve in that capacity. What is your, let's see, when did the announcement come through? How long ago?
The selection actually happened at the end of September, and then there's a challenge period afterwards. And that challenge period ended on December 1st. And so the official announcement, I was officially announced just about a week ago, actually. It
So no
became
one
truly
challenged
official.
your character or your past criminal record or
Nobody
anything like
challenged it.
that?
Yeah, and that's more common in other parts of the world than it is in ours. But I will be honest with you, Michael. I was counting down the days. A good friend of mine will tell you I nearly wore him out. Every morning I would text him how many days were left.
Oh, that's funny. Well, you had
Yeah.
nothing to worry about. You're one of the most upstanding gentlemen I know. Please.
So I was going to say, you were mentioning, why in the world you would want the job, and I think that's actually a really good point and a great question. I think sometimes we tend to denigrate Rotary leadership and the opportunities that presents. And at every step along the way, I have always, when I was club president, both times, my thinking was, if I can get 30 people in my community who were civic minded, the members of my Rotary Club all pointed in the same direction for a year, what could we accomplish?
Right.
And then I think when I was district governor, if I can get 2,000 people pointed in the same direction for a year, what can we accomplish? And so as I look forward to being director, there are a lot of things that fall into that. And I think the closer you get to a position like that, the more you have to respect it, because the demands are high. You're going to have to work at it. But the flip side of that is the director role is a 2-year role. And if I can get 60,000 Rotarians, give or take, assuming you're never going to get all of them, but if I get 60,000 people pointed in roughly the same direction for 2 years, what can we accomplish?
Yeah.
And that's what makes it rewarding to me.
Your initial comment was interesting. The premise, or the predicate for everything you said after it was, we tend to denigrate Rotary leadership. I think we tend to denigrate leadership of all types. It's almost like an in vogue type of thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how far back this goes. People make a case that, America was innocent until John F. Kennedy was assassinated. They just not celebrated, but marked the 60th anniversary of his tragic death. That because that borne out so many conspiracy theories that we actually became different people during that time. We started to not trust the government. We became more cynical. We became more free-minded. Some might argue another seminal point was the invention of social media, when everybody became a publisher. We always had individual opinions, but I didn't have to deal with your opinion until I got a Facebook account.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you're right about all of those things, actually. And in the case of Rotary leadership in particular, if you're a member of Rotary and you hang around any amount of time at all, you're going to hear someone say, I'm going to be club president. I missed a meeting. I'm going to become club president because I wasn't there to defend myself from that role, is essentially what they're saying.
It's always a joke, by the way.
It's always a joke, but it's become accepted. And when I was district governor, for instance, I made a very real point to all of my club presidents when I was district governor. I want you to understand that I'm here because I want to be here. I didn't miss a meeting. I didn't fall into this by accident.
Good.
I am here with you because I want to be here.
Good for you.
And I think that changes everything.
People talk in patterns and we copy each other. We're not that far from apes. And so there's another popular thing in the Rotary world is that I couldn't possibly serve as a Rotary Club president or a Rotary district governor because I'm still working. And I worked hard to, as I know you did, to dispel that myth. And I actually talked against it. I could have easily, and so could have you, fallen into that cliche, I'm going to wait till I retire to become governor. When I became governor, I proudly told people, I'm not only a working governor, I travel for a living. And here's how many meetings I missed with my club, or here's all I got done during my Rotary leadership year. One of those things, by the way, was a big thing you helped me with. We're going to talk about how to raise $1 million here in one night in this podcast. So if you're watching, get out your pen, man. You're going to need it. That was terrific advice.
Yeah.
But this idea of swimming against the current a little bit and to hold the standard, man, because otherwise everything denigrates, everything like distills to its lowest common denominator, and somebody's got to be the standard bearer. I think we look for that from our district and directors, district leaders and directors.
That's exactly right. You were talking too about the concept of working while you're district governor and doing these things. And so many people say, I'm going to wait until I retire. I'm going to wait until the kids are out of the house. And to go back and to close the loop on something earlier, frankly, it was in my mid-30s. I was diagnosed with a potentially fatal heart arrhythmia. I don't talk about it a whole lot. It wound up being thyroid related. My thyroid just wasn't working. We got it straightened out. It's fine. But for a little while there, my doctor told me, your heart could get out of rhythm and you would just be gone.
Wow.
And that's a sobering thing to have to face in your mid 30s. And that was what made me start to think about the fact that I had not left a mark on the world. And so while there's this idea that somehow we're going to wait for everything to be perfect to make a difference, the fact of the matter is we don't know if that opportunity will exist tomorrow.
Yeah.
And if we take that chance to make the difference today, then we may not ever get that chance. And that may be a little macabre, but frankly, it's exactly what happened in my life. It's what led to the trip to Russia. It's what led to my Rotary journey.
Opportunity is seldom convenient.
That's absolutely true.
What do you do for work? Speaking of work.
I started my career as a CPA and then became a computer programmer because accounting was too exciting. And I actually, I passed the CPA exam. I did it for 4.5 years. I did a year in private, 3.5 in public, and it was not for me. And so I'd loved computers for forever. And then back in 2000, me and 3 other guys started a business doing financial systems, enterprise resource planning systems for businesses. And our clients have ranged from mom and pop businesses up to publicly traded companies. And so we go in, we help them set up accounting systems, but they're not just accounting systems. They're really business operating systems.
So you went from working with all kinds of numbers to working with zeros and ones.
Exactly right. It was too confusing to add, 2 through 9.
What is the name of your company in case people want to look you up?
AIM Technologies. It is aim-technologies.com is the website.
Very good. So you're working now. You're going to be spending a lot more time with Rotary. Did you talk to your business partners about any kind of a time sharing shift?
One of the things that I've been very fortunate about, when we started AIM Technologies, our whole goal was to have a business that allowed us a lifestyle, not to make every possible penny we could. And so we all agreed in 2000 when we started the business, we were going to make our kids' school plays, and we were going to make the baseball games and the cheerleading tryouts and everything else. And so the business was really designed to allow us to do these things. And then my business partners have been very giving. They kind of consider allowing me to do Rotary to be part of their service. And so
that's interesting.
They've been very accepting of the role that I played in Rotary.
You're going to have to give them some Paul Harris points now.
That's fine. That's not a problem. We can work that out.
I was thinking when you said, we promised ourselves that we would all make our kids' softball games and stuff. Everybody says that when they start a business.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and we actually meant it.
That's great.
I could not. I could not ask for 3 better business partners than I've got. It's been a great ride. And we do, look, I mean, don't get me wrong. We carry laptops on vacations. We carry, I literally have done work for a customer while in Honduras working at a dental clinic with big rich churchmen. So we make it work. Yeah,
good. You remind me that a lot of times when people get in trouble on this kind of stuff, they messed up their priorities. They got their ducks. Nobody ever talks about having ducks not in a row. They talk about getting them into a row, but a lot of people have ducks out of the row. And I always tell Rotarians, I think you have the same philosophy that it's family first. I'll actually put something above family, which is personal health. Because if your heart or thyroid isn't working, you're no good to your family. That's thyroid's a major thermostat for the body, man. You got to have that functioning. Yeah. So personal health first, then family, then work, and then Rotary or service, right? So Rotary is 4th on the list, but I know a lot of people who put Rotary first, and they do it. It's almost like the equivalent of flag waving, patriotism, Yeah. And they do this at their own peril, because if you're putting Rotary first, man, you're neglecting yourself. You're not getting enough sleep. You're neglecting your family. And you're getting in trouble at work because you're spending too much time doing Rotary stuff.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Like anything in life, those priorities can shift a little bit from time to time. And that sometimes family's got to come first. Sometimes sometimes you've got to come first, as you mentioned, with your personal health and even your mental health. And that's one thing that Gordon McAnally, RI president, is pushing this year. You've got to make sure that you take care of that too. And so, but I always involved my kids in Rotary. Lynn is my wife. Lynn is a Rotarian, and so this has kind of become a family thing. And my kids would go to meetings with me. Even as I began to get to the zone level, my kids, Patrick, my youngest, he's my son who's now 19, and like I said, he just went through basic training. And I tell people, Rotarians I know that haven't seen him in a few years, that he just finished basic, and they're amazed that this little kid that they haven't seen in forever is now in the National Guard, and
Serving their country,
that's exactly right.
our country. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, tell me you're still making time for fun, non-work, non-Rotary stuff. What do you do to relax and become your child self?
You know, I told you I've always loved computers, and when I say I've always loved computers, I mean from the time I was a kid, I've been fascinated with them. I mowed grass all summer and bought a Commodore 64 at the end of summer. In the early 80s, I mowed enough grass to save $500 in a summer. And it's why I hate mowing grass today, because I did it constantly. And but I became an accountant, but I've always loved computer games. And so I still today, I play computer games. That's probably my number one hobby, with right behind it being cooking. I love to run a smoker. I've got a griddle outside as well. I love to use the griddle, a bake. I do a little bit of all of it. And so I've just gotten to where I really enjoy cooking, but computer gaming and cooking, that's the way I blow off steam.
Good for you, man.
Yeah.
That's an interesting combination.
Well, the smoker is really nice, and I cheat. I mean, it's not really cheating, but it's kind of cheating. I got a pellet smoker, and
Oh,
it takes the fire management aspect out of
so
the
you're not
smoke.
bothering with certain types of wood and all that kind of stuff.
Well, you can get different flavors of pellets to put in it, so that still affects it, and you have that ingredient. But you're not having to sit there and make sure that the fire is burning and throw a log on it. You fill the pellet hopper up, and you can go do whatever you want to.
Okay.
And so yeah, it's a good way to do it.
Congratulations. That's cool.
Yeah.
Let's talk Rotary for a second, including how to raise $1 million in one night. Um, Before we talk about the fundraising aspects, let's talk about the Rotary balance sheet. I know you come from an accounting background, the pluses and the minuses, because for any organization, as good as the organization might be, there might be some issues or challenges, right? Um, One of the things I've admired about Rotary in the 20, almost 30 years now that I've been a member is that this idea of giving back and helping people is as solid as it's ever been. Volunteerism, doing things for people that are less fortunate will never, ever, ever get old. It certainly doesn't get old for me.
No, that's exactly right. And that's an area where Rotary is so strong. And from local community service, our club has a huge project every year where we give out whole turkeys and all of the trimmings to literally about 1,500 families
Wow.
at Christmas time each year. It's a huge project. So from those kind of local efforts all the way up to doing, we did a mammography bus in India that actually worked in conjunction with a medical school and would go out into rural areas to do mammographies for women to detect breast cancer early and then get them treatment if they needed it. And human milk banks and eye surgeries and everything around the world, all of those things combined to make Rotary service a really amazing avenue. And one thing I've said for a while too, and I'll finish on this note, is that when you start to make these differences around the world, Michael, the world changes to you, right? I mean, when
Yeah.
you put a human milk bank in India, it's no longer just a yellow blob on the globe. I see you've got a globe behind you there. It's not just a yellow blob on the globe. India becomes a place where you've made a difference and you care about the children. And as it turns out, and Sting kind of references to going back to that, closing that loop, It's much harder to advocate nuking someone that you helped. I mean, it's just a natural equation, and so it goes to the peace building aspect of Rotary that we talk about so much too.
Yeah. Uh, Tell everybody that's enjoying us today, enjoying us. That's my version of it. Tell everybody that's watching and listening what a human milk bank is.
So actually, in India, interestingly enough, you cannot get formula, baby formula, off the shelf to feed your child the way you can here in the States. You've got to have a prescription for it. They believe so strongly that mother's milk is the best for the baby that you have a very specific reason to get formula. So they have human milk banks in place where mothers who are able to give milk, have more than their child needs, perhaps their child is no longer on the milk, but they can still give, will go donate their milk. And then the milk bank will actually take that, treat it, make sure it's safe, everything, freeze it. And then mothers who are unable to provide milk can go to this bank and get that milk. And I was actually able to speak at the ribbon cutting on one, and I told them that really what this is, and I think this is part of the magic of international service, is it's easy to boil it down to an exchange of human milk, but at the end of the day, it was an exchange of hope. And that's what we're doing. You know, the mothers who are able to give milk hope that they're able to save a child, and they come to the bank and they donate hope. And then those mothers who are unable to get them to give milk, to produce milk, come to the bank in the hopes that their child grow up to be amazing people, right?
Yeah.
And so, and that's really where Rotary, and gosh, I mean, I hope Gordon watches this. I didn't intend to get to this, but his theme this year, you know, is create hope in the world. And that's exactly what we do as Rotarians. We're creating hope and we're helping deliver on that hope. And as you said, it's hard to duplicate that anywhere else.
I'm converting human milk. What did you call it? A human milk bank
Yep.
to a
That's
human hope bank.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I like that.
Huh.
I like that.
On the other side of the balance sheet, Rotary giving and volunteerism and helping your neighbor, all that kind of stuff. On the other side of the balance sheet is a big challenge, I think, for our organization, which is relevancy. Not so much in our cause and our purpose, but how it's packaged. For a long time, Rotary was steeped in what I call the three Ps, because Rotary was discovered in 1905 or founded in 1905 by Paul Harris. It was a time of policy, procedure, and protocol.
Yeah.
And those were baked into our DNA, into our policies and well, policy is policy, right? It was baked into our bylaws. And then, you know, 100+ years on, you can still smell a lot of that policy, procedure, and protocol in how we do things today in an informal world where every day is casual Friday.
Yeah.
And I think we struggle with that to some extent because visitors come to these clubs sometimes and they get hit with a very scripted, formal, structured meeting.
Yeah. You know, I've given talked about this in a speech or two, and I'm actually going to be speaking at a PETS in March, and I'm going to talk about it there as well. There are a couple of amazing videos out on YouTube that you ought to check out. One, if you just go to YouTube and search for Steve Jobs iPhone, you'll find the video where Steve Jobs is introducing the iPhone for the very first time.
Wow.
And at about, I don't remember the 6 or 8 minute mark, somewhere in there, he begins talking about a revolutionary new interface. And he puts up a picture of 4 current phones back then on the screen, and, you know, BlackBerry and Motorola. And he says, you know, they're all fine, capable machines. He says, the problem is in the bottom 40, and the picture narrows, and all you see are the keyboards. He says, you know, all these keyboards are set in plastic. And the problem with that is you can't change them. You ship them. If you need a new button, too bad. Everything's done. He said, our revolutionary new interface is no keyboard. We're going to pop up a keyboard that you're going to be able to use your finger on, and we can change it, and we can add buttons, and we can do these things. And it's really fascinating to listen to him introduce this concept back then. And then the second video you need to watch right behind it is Google, or you go to YouTube and search for Steve Ballmer iPhone. Now, Steve Ballmer was the CEO of Microsoft at the time. And this happens days after Steve Jobs introduces the iPhone. And Steve gets asked about the iPhone. And he laughs and he says, $500, fully subsidized with the plan, most expensive phone ever. And he said, and business users aren't going to want it because it doesn't have a keyboard. It's not going to be a good email machine. And if we stop and we look now, I mean, how many of us are carrying around phones that have keyboards set in plastic? None of us do.
Right.
So the question becomes, how is this relevant? The question becomes in Rotary, what are our keyboards? What are the things we look at that in Rotary, we swear people are going to leave our organization if we don't have this keyboard. You know, if we don't serve lunch, if we don't meet at lunch, if we don't meet on Tuesday, if we don't say the Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning of this, whatever the case may be, what are the keyboards that we're hanging on to that in all reality, if we just got rid of them, Michael, we would find out that we are so much more efficient.
Yeah.
And attractive.
I do remember seeing the, what is it actually called when you're touching this screen? Is there a technical name for that?
You know, they do it via bit mapping, and I forget what Apple called it. But in that video, he talks about, you know, using a stylus. He says, no, we're not going to use a stylus.
Stylus.
And what a great idea. I think the iPhone would have died. Can you imagine trying to keep up with a stylus with your phone?
But just to show you how people are with change, and I'm not the worst. I'm not the best, but I'm not the worst with change. I saw other people using this glass screen, let's call it glass, and touching it, and I'm like, everybody's got lotion on their hands and food and, you know, gunk and stuff. This is never gonna go. How are you gonna keep that clean, man?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's exactly right. There was every reason in the world not to make that change. But, you know, Steve Jobs, he made a comment too, and I think you see it clearly with the iPhone. Steve Jobs said that the customer is not smart enough to know what they want. Which
That's
is
interesting.
It's an amazing comment because on the face of it, you think that's really insulting.
Yeah.
But at the end, if you stop and think about it, how many of us really envisioned, other than Steve, envisioned anything other than what we had in our hand?
You know, like a lot of truisms, there's an opposite approach to it. I teach presentation skills, and I'm a big fan of Lenny Bruce's line. Lenny Bruce was the stand-up comedian, everybody, that was very popular in the late 50s, early 60s. And he always says the audience is a genius. The opposite of and they're both correct, right?
Yeah.
There were potential Apple customers who saw the wisdom of where Jobs was going. Some of them did. Perhaps most of them did not. There are people in my audience that know a good joke as soon as they hear it, and they'll send me that ping. That's an IT term, Brian, ping. They'll ping me.
Really?
That was funny, right? And validate it, and I'll use that joke for another year on stage.
Yep.
But there are also people in the audience that don't understand humor or don't relate to me, and I'll get nothing from them. They're right too, of course.
Yep.
But this is Rotary's challenge.
Exactly right.
This is Rotary's challenge, is try to look through that long lens and try to guess what's going to help us be relevant in a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20.
And you know,
and it's your job now, Mr. Director-Elect.
Yeah, thanks.
No pressure.
Appreciate that. Yeah. You know, but at the end of the day, what it's about is it's about having an organization. And I think we've done a good job of doing this in the last few years, an organization that's open to change. You know, it is easy, relatively speaking, to implement change at the club level, harder to implement change at the boardroom level.
Yeah.
And so I think the board's job is to make the possibility of change greater and allow clubs to do what becomes relevant, because if something doesn't work, it's okay. You can try something and switch back. You know, it's not a problem.
That's the dirty little secret with Rotary, is that so many of Rotary's big changes happened at the club level first. I mean, think about things like attendance, mandatory attendance at club meetings for years, and you know this. I think it was you had to make 60%, 60. Was that the number?
I believe so. Yeah.
of your club meetings. Otherwise, you would be again air quotes because it wasn't ever really true. You would be kicked out of Rotary.
Well,
But
go ahead. I'm sorry.
it was a form of I don't know enforcement to encourage people to show up regularly. And then a couple of years ago, everybody knows now that but they think Rotary International did it. No, they learned that from the clubs, in my opinion. They said this attendance thing, not only is it really working, it's not necessary. Let's revoke that thing that was baked into our initial DNA because in the days of virtual meetings and all these people doing visitations, it's just not as important as it used to be. To their credit, I think.
Yeah.
Doesn't
Oh,
mean
absolutely.
doesn't mean the decision was free of problems.
No, that's exactly right. And there are, the year after I was district governor, I was club president for the second time. Not the smartest decision I ever made. But I was club president, and I actually had a situation with our district secretary who was demanding our club's attendance. And even at that time, we started moving towards engagement as our model rather than attendance. And I tried to tell him that, and he came back to me and said, "No, Brian, Rotary said we absolutely have to have these numbers. I need your attendance numbers." So I emailed him back and I said, "Okay, Gil," I said, "everybody was at every meeting." He said, "Thank you." And that was the end of it.
Oh wow. I had a similar because that's how seriously people took it. It was like
Yeah.
the what do we hear? The difference between the letter of the law
And
and
spirit.
the spirit, whatever. I was doing a lot of visits because I was getting so many speaking invitations to speak at Rotary events. Well, technically, as you know, it's a makeup for me for my own club if I missed. So I could get a makeup and bring it back to my club, and then I would get credit for attendance. It's a funny story. We laugh about it to this day with my old treasurer, Kevin Dallaire, at the Troy Rotary Club of Michigan. And Kevin honored the letter of the law, right? And he's like, "Hi, where you been? I haven't seen you for a while at the meeting." And I go, "Well, I've been out speaking. I got some." For a while there, I was bringing the makeup
Mm-hmm.
slips. And then I stopped bringing them back, and I said, "I did a couple makeups. I need to have that, I need to be credited for it." He says, "Where's your makeup slip?" Well, I said, "Well, I don't have a makeup slip, but I have a video of me presenting to the Rotary Club of such and such, or here's a photo of me there with the president." And he looked at me, he goes, "I'm going to need a makeup slip."
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
this is
And
how
you
you
know that,
figure out how to readjust your calibration on your GPS so that you're headed in true north instead of just general doing stuff because you're doing it.
right, exactly. And one of the other dirty secrets about all of that and the attendance model too was that lunches have gotten so expensive
Mm.
that you count on people, clubs count on people not showing up to meetings to make the budget work. If everybody showed up to every meeting, some clubs would go absolutely broke.
What kind of crap is that where you count on people not showing up so you can make your numbers?
That's exactly right. I mean, it's really it's an interesting model, Michael. It's not one I've encountered in business.
I like that you and I can talk openly and honestly in this way about our favorite charitable organization because there was a time where you couldn't do this. I certainly couldn't do it with a
Okay.
director-elect.
Well,
And
my
I think
challenge period is up, Michael. So
well, also we started to really take what the psychologists call that naked look in the mirror. This is who we really are. Can we just talk about it openly? Why do we have to
yeah,
pretend we're somebody else? And I think that will serve us very well moving forward. Let's talk about how
I
to raise
agree.
$1 million in one night. The concept is $1 million dinner. And people, anybody watching this, if you got a charity or you want to raise a lot of money for your organization, Brian talked about a way to leave a mark on an organization or leave a mark in the world. This is a fantastic way to do it because $1 million in any currency is a lot of dough. So when I was governor of my district in 2016-17, I wanted to host a $1 million dinner as one of my legacy projects for the year. Legacy project is something that governors are remembered by ipso facto. So I wanted a few of them just in case, two of them belly flopped, right? So one of them was going to be this idea of $1 million dinner, but I didn't know anything about how to do one. I knew you had done one. and I called you to be a guest on Zoom, a new teleconference platform called Zoom. Just getting all my people on that Zoom call that night was fun. And you were very gracious. It might have been a teleconference call, but we all got together on the call,
Mhm.
and you were very gracious because I asked you how you did it in your district, which I'm going to ask you to reiterate in just a second. And then I'm going to tell you the funniest thing that happened, back to change again. When you actually, I put you on first so that you could be excused. You didn't have to be on the whole call with us, right? Because we needed to talk about what you shared with us after you were gone. So I asked you, Brian, you did it successfully. It's a very simple, elegant, I call it Occam's razor, the simplest, most elegant solution. And you shared it with us that night. And to this day, I just smile when I think about it because it was so elegant. Could you share it again with us now? The simplest way to raise $1 million in one evening from in a Rotary $1 million dinner.
Yeah, it boiled down to simple math to me. You find 40 people, as I mentioned, to pay you $25,000 for dinner, and you're done. You've got $1 million, and that's really, and that sounds very simple, and it's very daunting to go ask for those kind of dollars. But at the end of the day, you find out that people not only are willing, they're capable and they can. And some people can make much larger donations. Um, and sometimes you run into a challenge where people don't want to set the bar quite that high,
Hmm.
the $25,000 mark. But I think when you do that, you, you can ask for more and you can get there. And
Yeah,
that's the long and short of it.
yeah. I think the people that have the most trouble asking for 20 or $25,000 are the people that don't have it to give and have never given that amount.
Yeah.
You think that
Well,
because you don't have the money, that nobody has it. The people that have given 25 are almost brazen about asking for it because they've done it and they know a lot of people who do it, and they're like flying at a different altitude financially than some others.
the guy who chaired the $1 million dinner for me went to lunch with a real estate developer in New Orleans who has that capability. And he told me the story that he was at lunch with the guy, and they were talking about giving to the $1 million dinner. And the guy said, "Okay, I'll give you $25,000." And my friend kind of looked at him and said, "Okay." And he said, "Well, what's wrong?" He said, "Well, I was really hoping for 50."
Because the
And,
25 was such an easy get.
and the guy said, "All right, I'll give you 50."
Oh my
And just
gosh,
like that,
2x.
he got $50,000. Yeah, just because he was willing to make that ask. You
Well, I
know.
want to tell you what happened when after you hung up, after you were so gracious to explain this to us, take time out of your day to share your proven, tested experience with us. And I tell this story to this day because all the people on my end were great people, great Rotarians, but we all wrestle with change, and we all, as service people, we want to make everybody happy. So we said goodbye to you and thank you very much, and you hung up the phone, and I said to everybody on the call, I said, okay, Brian Hall, the expert, he's done it. Gave us a very simple example about how to do this. It was one sentence. Everybody understood what he said, right? Everybody goes, yeah. And then I said, let's do it. And then the hands started to come up. And they said, the very first person that raised his hand said, well, we can't do that because we need to invite everyone to the $1 million dinner, and not everyone will be able to attend for $25,000. And I'm in my chair and I go like this. Because the concept went over his head. He didn't get it. And I articulated at the time right on the spot because I'd been thinking about this a lot. What I thought was a terrific answer to him. And the answer was, our goal is not to have everyone attend the dinner. Our goal is to raise $1 million.
That's right.
And even that didn't translate. Then everybody started piling on. Oh yeah, we need to have everybody come. In the end, Brian, you'll be glad to know we allowed anybody that wanted to come. They did have to pay $100 to come to our dinner. We kept the numbers high. We found different ways to get. It wasn't a $25,000 get, but we found different ways to make that thermometer climb to 1 million. We actually raised 1,200,000 and
Fantastic.
presented a check to Rotary International for that amount of money. Rotary 1.2 and change. And you helped us do it. And I don't know if I ever properly said thank you, but I am today.
I'm thrilled that you guys had a successful event, which is proof that there's not just one way to do something.
Yeah.
And in our model, we always wanted to provide the dinner. We got a sponsor to provide the dinner. It was at a nice place in the French Quarter, and obviously having 1,000 people there was not going to fly
Yeah.
in that model. So it depends on how you want to approach it.
Well, where there's a will, there's a way, and
That's right.
Rotary is filled with willful people. And I'm so glad that you're one of them. Congratulations again on
Thank you.
becoming director. Remind us when you punch in. What is the year of your 2 years of your
July
service?
1 of 2025, I will officially become director.
Fabulous. And until then, you're doing something called backbenching, which is
That's right.
showing up at all the board of directors meetings and
Yep.
learning and acclimating. Is that true?
Hey, well, I haven't been invited to one yet. And now that the challenge period is over, I think that will probably start to happen. I've gotten a couple of official emails about different things from Rotary already in just the last week. And that will certainly start to pick up. I'm looking forward to seeing that. Somehow I feel like I'm going to feel like a little kid at the big kids table at Christmas,
Yeah, at least
with my
initially.
feet, yeah, with my feet dangling off the chair, won't touch the floor, but it's going to be an interesting ride.
Well, two other things that are about to happen is you're about to be getting requests for autographs, and you'll
Yeah,
probably start getting better seats at better tables at restaurants.
you know, I hadn't thought about that, and the whole autograph thing. Really, I think what would be interesting is to see what those are actually worth in the secondary market.
Yeah,
I
probably
think that'll
probably
tell me
twice as
really,
much.
yeah, that'll tell me the real value. I think, Michael.
Brian Hall, my friend, congratulations again on this big, big life achievement. Also, congratulations to your wife, Lynn. She's going to experience it with you. You're a
Yep.
role model for so many other Rotarians, including me. I'm so proud to know you. And I'm Team Brian. If you ever need anything, brother, you just call me up, okay?
You got it. I will do that. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate you.
More information about Rotary, everybody, at rotary.org. Thank you for watching. Again, if you've enjoyed this interview, listen to the podcast versions on the iTunes and Podbean. And if you like what you're hearing and you want to watch it, you can watch it on the Angelo Caruso YouTube channel. Bye for now.